Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also, share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. The sun has already set behind the dusty hills of Nevada, leaving behind only an orange stripe on the horizon. In the small town of Longview, where houses stood far apart and the streets were silent, Nate Carter tinkered in his garage. The sound of a wrench hitting the concrete floor broke the evening silence, and Nate cursed under his breath. It was hot and cramped under the old 90s Ford pickup he was working on for a neighbor, but it was always his sanctuary. The door between the garage and the house creaked, and Sophia Martinez, his wife, appeared in the opening. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her face looked tired from a night shift at the hospital. She tossed her bag onto the workbench and stretched, rubbing her neck. Nate got out from under the car, wiping his hands with an oil-soaked rag, and looked at her. Something in her movements seemed alien to him, maybe too sharp, maybe too distant. "You're late," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "Did the shift take too long?" Sophia nodded without looking at him and opened the refrigerator in the corner of the garage where Nate kept beer and water. She pulled out a bottle of water and took a long sip before answering. Yes, there was a blockage. 2 with heat stroke, 1 with a fracture. The usual chaos. She shrugged and finally looked at him. "Are you still fiddling with this junk?" Nate chuckled, glancing at the pickup truck. "The junk pays for our light, Sophie. Jack wants to pick her up tomorrow, so we need to finish this." "Well, good luck with that," she said, a hint of irritation creeping into her tone. She turned away as if to go into the house, but Nate noticed how her hand trembled as she placed the bottle on the workbench. "And this smell is light, but unfamiliar. Cologne? Not him for sure. His Old Spice smells different." "Wait," he stepped towards her, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Are you okay? You look." "I don't know, I'm exhausted." Sophia froze, then slowly turned around. Her lips stretched into a smile, but her eyes remained cold. "Nate, I just worked 12 hours. Of course, I'm exhausted. You would be too if you ran from gurney to gurney all day." "I see," he nodded, but something in her voice caught his attention. She answered too quickly, too sharply. "I just asked. Is Mia home?" "Yes, in my room. She said she would do her homework and go to bed." "Don't expect her for dinner." Sophia waved her hand and headed towards the door. "I'll take a shower and go to bed too. Tired as a dog." "Wait a minute." Nate stepped after her, not letting her leave so easily. "Don't you want to eat yourself? I can whip something up. Potatoes, scrambled eggs." Sophia stopped, placing her hand on the doorknob. She sighed as if he had asked her to run a marathon. "Nate, I'm really not hungry. Ate at the hospital. Someone ordered pizza there, so I'm good." "Pizza." He narrowed his eyes. "Are you having a party there?" "Jesus, Nate, this wasn't a party." She rolled her eyes. "Just food so you don't die of hunger." "Don't start, okay?" "I'm not starting." He raised his hands, indicating that he was giving up. "It's just strange that you didn't say it before. Usually you tell me how your day went." "Well, I didn't tell you today. Sorry for not reporting on form, Sergeant Carter." Her voice became sarcastic, and she pushed the door open, going into the house. Nate was left standing in the middle of the garage, looking at the closed door. Sergeant Carter. She hadn't called him that since he returned from the army 10 years ago. It was a joke then, their common joke. Now it sounded like a blow. He walked over to the workbench, took her bag, and automatically ran his hand over the fabric. The smell of cologne became stronger sharp, with a hint of something expensive. Nate frowned. His mind began to spin. Maybe this was from some doctor. The hospital is full of people. But for some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not just an accident. He put the bag back and returned to the pickup, but his thoughts no longer allowed him to concentrate. Sophia has always been open, at least she used to be. She told him about the patients, about the gossip in the hospital, even about how someone spilled coffee on the X-ray machine. And now she was closing, like a door she had just slammed. "Dad," Mia's voice came from the doorway, and Nate flinched. His daughter stood there in her cat pajamas, holding her algebra textbook. Her dark hair was disheveled, and her eyes were sleepy. "Hey, baby," he smiled, trying to hide his confusion. "You said that you would sleep." "I was going to, but I heard you and Mom, well, not exactly arguing, but—" She hesitated, fiddling with the corner of the textbook. "Is something wrong?" Nate wiped his hands on a rag and walked over to her, leaning against the workbench. "Nothing's wrong, Mia. Mom is just tired after work, and I, like a fool, pester you with questions. Everything is fine." "You are sure?" She looked at him with the insight that she inherited from her mother. "She's been kind of, I don't know, twitchy lately. And you too." "I—" Nate laughed, but it was forced. "I'm fine. I'm just trying to fix this old wreck, and she's not cooperating with me." Mia nodded, but it was clear that she didn't believe it. "Okay, it's just, if something's wrong, you'll tell me, right? I'm not little anymore." "Of course, I'll tell you." He extended his hand and patted her head, as he did when she was younger. "Go to bed, algebra won't teach itself." "Yeah," she smiled and turned to the door, but turned around on the threshold. "Dad, do you eat yourself? Otherwise, you always forget." "We'll eat, don't worry," he winked. "Good night, Mia." "Calm down." She left, and the door slammed again. Nate stayed alone. He looked at the pickup truck, then at Sophia's bag, still lying on the workbench. The silence of the garage weighed on him like the heat of the desert during the day. He went to the refrigerator, took out a beer and opened it, taking a sip. The cold bitterness calmed my nerves a little, but not my thoughts. Something was wrong. He felt it in his bones, like he felt the sandstorm when he served in Iraq. And that smell of cologne, it haunted him. "Maybe I'm paranoid," he muttered under his breath, looking at the pickup truck. "Maybe it's just a hospital. Doctors, nurses, everything." But deep down, he knew that this was not so. Sophia was hiding something. And Nate, a man accustomed to fixing everything that breaks, suddenly realized that he did not know how to fix what was collapsing right before his eyes. He finished his beer, threw the can in the trash, and went back to work. The morning in Longview began with a dusty wind that blew sand through the empty streets. Nate woke up earlier than usual, awakened by the creaking of the bed as Sophia stood up and went to the bathroom. He lay there looking at the ceiling until the sound of the water died down, and she slipped into the kitchen, trying not to make any noise. It was strange. Usually she woke him up with coffee, or at least the slamming of a closet door. Today she moved like a shadow. Nate came downstairs in an old t-shirt and jeans, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Sophia stood at the stove, stirring something in a frying pan. The smell of bacon and eggs filled the kitchen, but her face was tense, as if she were solving a difficult problem in her head. "Good morning," he said, walking over to the coffee maker. "You're early today." Sophia shuddered, almost dropping her spatula, and glanced at him quickly. "Morning, Nate." "Yes, I decided to get up early. We have to go to the hospital by 8. There's some kind of briefing there." Instruction. He poured himself some coffee and leaned against the countertop, watching her. "You said that you have a day off after the night." She froze for a second, then shrugged, not looking up from the frying pan. "Well, plans have changed. You know how it happens with us. Someone got sick, someone didn't come out. We have to adapt." "I see." Nate took a sip of coffee, but the bitter taste did not overcome his doubts. "Who didn't come out?" "What?" She turned around, frowning. "I asked who didn't come out." "Just curious." He tried to smile to soften the question, but it came out crooked. Sophia rolled her eyes and went back to her scrambled eggs. "Jesus, Nate, do I have to read you the staff list? I don't remember. One of the girls seems to be Linda. Her child is sick." "Okay, okay." He raised his hand in surrender. "I'm just keeping up the conversation." "Keep silent," she muttered, putting scrambled eggs on a plate. "Is Mia still sleeping?" "Probably." Nate nodded towards the stairs. "I'll go wake you up. She has school in an hour." He went upstairs, knocked on Mia's door, and looked inside. The daughter lay wrapped in a blanket, with headphones in her ears. Nate walked over and shook her shoulder lightly. "Hey, sleepyhead, get up. Mom made scrambled eggs." Mia groaned, pulling out one headphone. "Dad, 5 minutes." "Well, please. Not 5 minutes. You have algebra in the morning, remember? Get up, or I'll pull you out myself." "You're a beast." She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Is Mom home?" "Yes, but not for long. She's having some kind of briefing at the hospital." Nate sat down on the edge of the bed. "Did you see her yesterday when she came back?" Mia shrugged, yawning. "Nope. I was already asleep." "Was she even at home?" "It was." Nate frowned. "It's just late. The shift was delayed." "Yeah, as always," Mia snorted. "She hangs out there forever now." "Have you noticed that she's even at home? Not here?" Nate looked at his daughter, surprised by her powers of observation. "What do you mean?" "Well, I don't know." Mia reached for the phone on the nightstand. "She's on the phone all the time. Yesterday morning, I went down to get some water, and she was sitting in the living room typing something. She saw me and immediately turned off the screen. It's like I'm some kind of spy." "Did you type?" Nate felt something clench inside him. Maybe she wrote from work? Maybe, Mia shrugged. But it's strange. She used to show me everything photos from the hospital, some memes. And now he hides it. Nate nodded, trying not to show his concern. He stood up and clapped his hands. "Okay, get up, spy. Breakfast is getting cold." Mia rolled her eyes, but began to crawl out from under the blanket. Nate walked back down to the kitchen, where Sophia was already sitting at the table with a cup of coffee. The plate of scrambled eggs stood untouched. "Are you not eating?" he asked, sitting down opposite. "I don't want to," she shrugged. "Nervous stomach today." "Because of the instructions." He narrowed his eyes, watching her reaction. "Yes, Nate, because of the briefing." She stood up abruptly, pushing back her chair. "Listen, it's time for me to get ready. Don't question me in the morning, okay?" "I'm not interrogating." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I'm just interested in your life. We are married, if you haven't forgotten." Sophia froze at the sink, her back to him. Then she turned slowly, and something flashed in her eyes, irritation or whine. "I haven't forgotten, Nate. But sometimes you act like I'm at gunpoint. It's infuriating. And you act as if I can't ask anything," he retorted. "Something has changed, Sophie. I'm not blind." She opened her mouth to answer, but at that moment Mia's footsteps were heard on the stairs. Sophia pursed her lips and turned away, throwing the plate into the sink. "I have to go," she said quietly. "See you in the evening." "Aha." Nate watched as she grabbed her bag and left, slamming the door. The silence in the kitchen became heavy, like the desert air before a storm. Mia walked in, plopped down on a chair, and reached for some scrambled eggs. "Did you fight again?" she asked with her mouth full. "We weren't fighting." Nate shook his head. "They were just talking." "Yeah, they said," Mia snorted. "Dad, I'm not stupid. You and your mom have been strange lately. She comes home, but it's as if she's not with us. You see it too, right?" Nate looked at his daughter, not knowing what to say. He didn't want to drag Mia into this, but her words only added fuel to his suspicions. "Come on, eat." He nodded towards the plate. "Otherwise, you'll be late." "As you say," she rolled her eyes, but obeyed. Nate finished his coffee and stood up to clear the table. While he was washing the dishes, his gaze fell on Sophia's bag, which she had left on the chair. He wiped his hands and came closer. The phone was on top, screen down. Nate froze, fighting the urge to take it. "It's none of my business," he thought. But then I remembered Mia's words. "She's hiding." He extended his hand, but immediately withdrew it when he heard Mia's steps. "I'm going, Dad," she shouted from the hallway. "Don't forget to order pizza for me in the evening, you promised." "Not for I will," he responded, trying to sound cheerful. "Good luck at school." The door slammed and Nate was alone again. He looked at the bag, then at the phone. My heart was beating in my chest like a hammer. Finally, he grabbed it, turned on the screen the password. Of course, the password. It didn't exist before. Nate cursed under his breath and threw the phone back. But now the doubts were no longer just stirring, they were screaming. By evening, the heat in Longview had subsided, and the wind carried with it the smell of dry earth and a distant fire. Nate sat in the living room, flipping through channels on the old TV, but nothing held his attention. He was waiting for Sophia. She promised to be back for dinner, and Nate ordered pizza, as Mia asked. The box was already on the kitchen counter, wafting the scent of pepperoni, but his stomach was too tight to think about food. The door slammed and Mia rushed into the house, leaving her backpack at the threshold. Her cheeks were flushed from walking fast, and she was holding a bottle of water from the school vending machine. "Dad, I'm home," she shouted, taking off her sneakers. "Is the pizza here yet? I'm starving." "Here," Nate nodded towards the kitchen, turning off the TV. "Go wash your hands, we'll eat." Mia ran into the kitchen, grabbed a piece, and plopped down on a chair without even waiting for the plate. "You're a beast," Nate said, getting up from the couch. "At least take a napkin." "I'm not an animal, I'm just hungry," she grinned, taking a huge bite. "We had physical training today. We ran around in circles like idiots." "Where's Mom?" "It will be soon." Nate walked up to the table and took a piece for himself, although he had no appetite. "She said she'd be a little late, but she'd be in time for dinner." "Aha," Mia swallowed and looked at him. "Is she stuck in the hospital again?" "Probably," he shrugged, trying to sound indifferent. "She had a briefing there, and then, apparently, she had some business to attend to." Mia snorted, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Briefing, business. She's always there now. Previously, she at least told me how she sewed someone up or how an old man on a gurney screamed songs. And now silence." Nate froze, pizza in hand. Mia had hit the nail on the head again, and it annoyed him. He didn't want his daughter to delve into this, but her words only added fuel to the fire of his own thoughts. "Maybe she's just tired," he said, taking a bite. "The work is hard." "Maybe," Mia shrugged, but her tone was skeptical. "Didn't you ask what happened to her?" "I asked." Nate put the pizza back on the plate. "I tried this morning." She was in no mood to talk. "Well, yes, she's always not in the mood now." Mia reached for the second piece. "Have you noticed how she twitches when the phone rings? This morning I said hi to her, and she almost dropped the cup." "Seriously?" Nate narrowed his eyes on his daughter. "Are you following her?" "I'm not watching." She rolled her eyes. "I just see. I'm not blind, Dad, and you don't seem to notice." "I notice." He said this more quietly than he wanted, and immediately regretted it. Mia looked at him curiously, but he quickly changed the subject. "How was physical training? Haven't you been driven out at all?" "They drove me," she chuckled. "Mr. Kelly made us run around until Jesse threw up on the grass." Everyone laughed, and he yelled that we were lazy. Nate smiled, glad for the distraction. "Kelly has always been a psycho. I remember how he chased me when I was in school. Once he made me do push-ups because I was 5 minutes late." "Seriously?" Mia laughed. "You were cool in school, weren't you?" "Not cool, but stubborn," he winked. "Come on, eat, otherwise it will get cold." They chatted for another 10 minutes about school, how Mia hated algebra, and how Nate once fixed old man Bill's tractor in the middle of the night. But then the front door opened and Sophia walked into the kitchen. Her uniform was wrinkled, her hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She threw her bag on the chair and looked at them. "Hello," she said, her voice tired but taut. "Pizza? Great, I'm hungry." "Hi, Mom." Mia waved the piece at her. "You're late." "Yes, I know." Sophia sat down, took a piece, and took a bite without looking at Nate. "The hospital is in shambles. Again." "What kind of blockage?" Nate asked, crossing his arms over his chest. "You talked about the briefing this morning." Sophia paused with the pizza in her mouth, then slowly lowered it. "There was instruction, and then the patient had a seizure. I had to stay." "What, are you arranging an interrogation?" "Not an interrogation." He shook his head. "I'm just asking." You said to yourself that you'll be there for dinner. Well, sorry, Nate. She tossed the pizza onto the plate and leaned back in her chair. I can't predict when someone will decide to die. It's not on schedule. That's not what I'm talking about. He tried to keep his voice even. It's just strange that you didn't say anything. I could call. Oh, really? Her eyes flashed. Are you my nanny now? I'm a big girl, Nate. I'll do without calling. Mia coughed, looking at her plate, but the tension at the table was already palpable. Nate clenched his jaw, feeling irritation boiling inside him. I'm not a nanny, Sophie. I'm your husband. I would like to know that you are alive and not lying in a ditch somewhere. In a ditch? She snorted, almost laughing. Are you serious? I was in a hospital, Nate, not some bar. Yeah, in the hospital, he nodded, but a shadow of sarcasm flashed in his voice. With pizza yesterday and instructions today. Sophia stood up abruptly, the chair creaking on the floor. You know what? Eat your own pizza. I am going to sleep. I'm tired of all this. What is this from? Nate stood up too, not letting her leave so easily. Because I ask, where have you been? Because you don't believe me. She raised her voice, and Mia froze with a piece in her hand. I'm working, Nate. I work so that we have money so that Mia can go to college. And you sit here and invent God knows what. I'm not making this up. He stepped towards her. You act like you can't trust me. Stop. Mia slammed her palm on the table, and both parents turned to her. Are you serious? Are you going to yell at each other over pizza now? You are like children, by God. Sophia pursed her lips, looking at her daughter, then looked at Nate. She's right. I don't want to continue this. Good night. She walked away, leaving her bag on the chair, and Nate watched her leave, feeling his heart pounding. Mia sighed, pushing her plate away. Dad, what's going on with you? She asked quietly. You haven't quarreled like this before. I don't know, Mia. He sat back, rubbing his temples. Don't know. Well, find out. She stood up, took her piece, and headed towards the stairs. Because I'm tired of watching you pretend that everything is fine. Nate was left alone at the table. The pizza was cold, and the words of Sophia and Mia were spinning in my head. Something was wrong, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. The morning in Longview was quiet, except for the distant sound of a truck horn on the highway. Nate woke up to the sound of the front door slamming as Sophia left early again without saying goodbye. He lay in bed, looking at the empty pillow next to him, and tried to remember the last time she woke him up with a kiss or even a word. A month ago? 2? Time stretched out like sand in the desert, and he was no longer sure. He went down to the kitchen, where Mia was already sitting with a bowl of cereal, scrolling through something on her phone. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and there were shadows under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept well after last night's dinner. Good morning, Nate said, pouring himself some coffee. You're early. Aha, Mia didn't look up from the screen. We have a test in biology. We need to repeat it. Has Mom left? He leaned against the tabletop, trying to sound casual. Yeah, about 10 minutes ago, she finally looked up. She said she had a shift in the morning. Didn't you hear how she was getting ready? No, Nate took a sip of his coffee, feeling the bitter taste mixed with irritation. She's like a ghost, now she comes and goes. Mia chuckled, popping a spoonful of cereal into her mouth. Well, yes. I told her bye, but she just waved her hand. I didn't even look. That's strange. Nate put the mug on the table and sat down opposite. She used to always chat with you before school. Before, Mia emphasized this word, looking at him. Now she doesn't talk to anyone at all. Did you notice how she ran away yesterday? It's like we got her. I noticed, he nodded, remembering Sophia's harsh words and her departure. Maybe she's stressed at work. Maybe, Mia shrugged, but there was doubt in her voice. Or maybe she just doesn't want to talk to us. Have you thought about this? Nate looked at his daughter, surprised by her directness. She was right. Sophia was closing herself off not only from him, but also from Mia, and that made everything even worse. I thought, he admitted, but I don't know what to do about it. Ask her. Mia stood up, throwing the bowl into the sink. Otherwise, you both walk around like zombies, and I'm like a fool between you. Okay, he smiled, although the smile came out forced. Go study your biology. I'll figure it out. Good luck. She picked up her backpack and left, leaving Nate alone. He finished his coffee and began to clear the table, but his gaze fell on Sophia's bag, forgotten on the chair after yesterday's dinner. It lay there, slightly open, with the phone sticking out of its pocket. Nate froze. Yesterday he didn't dare take it, but today something inside clicked. He walked up and glanced at the door. What if she came back? And pulled the bag onto the table. It's none of my business, he muttered under his breath, but his hands were already rummaging in his pockets. Keys, lipstick, a couple of napkins, and a small crumpled receipt stuck in the side compartment. Nate turned it around, feeling his heart speed up. The Dusty Coyote is a bar on the outskirts of town. 2 cocktails, fries amount for 2. The date is the day before yesterday. The time is 21:47. Nate frowned. The day before yesterday, Sophia said that she stayed at the hospital until 10. He himself picked her up at 10:30, and she looked tired, but did not smell of alcohol. Or did it smell? He didn't sniff then. What the hell? He squeezed the check in his hand, looking at the numbers. Did you drink cocktails after work? He stuffed the check into his jeans pocket and grabbed Sophia's phone. The screen lit up, still a password. Nate cursed, threw the phone back, and began to pace around the kitchen like a hunted animal. My thoughts were spinning. Bar, cocktails, late evening. She could go there with her colleagues, right? But why didn't you say? And who was she with? The door slammed, and Nate turned around, startled. It was Mia returning from the doorstep. I forgot my notebook, she said, noticing his face. Dad, are you okay? It's like you saw a ghost. Yes, everything is fine. He quickly put his hands in his pockets, hiding the check. I was just thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. She squinted, looking at Sophia's bag. Have you been rummaging through your mother's things? No, he lied too quickly. I was just cleaning up. Uh-huh. Mia clearly didn't believe it, but went to the stairs. Don't do anything stupid, Dad. If you find anything, tell me. Go to school, he waved his hand, trying to hide the trembling in his voice. She walked away and Nate pulled out the check again, looking at it. Dusty Coyote was not the place to go for coffee after your shift. It was a bar with live music, dim lights, and a reputation for being a place where people were looking for more than just a drink. Nate clenched the paper in his fist. He could have called her and asked her directly, but something told me that she would lie. She had already lied about the briefing, about the delays, and now this check. He walked over to the telephone on the wall, an old corded machine they kept around in case of blackouts, and dialed the hospital number. After a couple of beeps, the sleepy voice of the receptionist answered. Longview, reception. How can I help? Hi, this is Nate Carter. He coughed, trying to sound calm. My wife, Sophia Martinez, works as a nurse for you. I wanted to clarify, is she on shift today? Sophia? The voice perked up. Wait, I'll check. Yes, she's here. I arrived about half an hour ago. She works from 8 in the morning until 4. I see, Nate nodded, although the woman did not see him. Did she work the day before yesterday? The day before yesterday. Rustling of papers. Yes, it was a night shift, from 6 in the evening to 10. She left on time, as far as I remember. On time, he repeated, feeling his insides grow cold. Thank you. You're welcome, the woman hung up. Nate slowly put the phone down. 10 p.m., check from the bar 2147. She left the hospital and went there. With whom, and why did you lie? He returned to the table, sat down, and stared at the bag. The smell of cologne, a phone with a password, now this. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and he didn't like the picture. Nate, you're paranoid, he said out loud, but his voice wavered. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe she was with a friend, but he knew it was a lie. Sophia didn't go to bars with her friends. She always said that she hates noisy places. Nate stood up, grabbed his car keys, and headed towards the garage. He didn't know what to do next, but he couldn't sit and wait any longer. The check burned in his pocket like a hot coal, and he understood. This was just the beginning. The day in Longview passed slowly, like the shadow of a lonely cactus in the desert. Nate sat in his garage, staring at the engine of the pickup truck he had been working on for 3 days. The tools lay nearby, but the hands did not move. The receipt from Dusty Coyote was still in his jeans pocket, wrinkled and hot, a reminder of something he couldn't get out of his mind. He tried to work, but his thoughts returned to Sophia, to her evasive answers, to the smell of cologne, to this damn bar. The door to the house creaked, and Mia looked into the garage. She was wearing a school t-shirt and shorts, with a backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad, I'm home," she said, throwing her backpack on the workbench. "Are you fighting with this machine again?" "Hey, baby," Nate forced a smile, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yes, I'm fighting. She doesn't want to start, and Jack has already called twice." "Maybe she's just tired of living," Mia chuckled, opening the refrigerator and taking out a can of cola. "How's Mom today?" "She left in the morning," he shrugged, trying not to show tension. "Shift until 4, she said. "Uh-huh." Mia took a sip and looked at him. "Have you spoken to her since yesterday?" "No." Nate threw the rag onto the workbench and leaned against the wall. "She left while I was sleeping. And you." "I told her bye." Mia rolled her eyes. She muttered something and stormed off. "As usual." "As usual," he repeated, feeling something clench inside him. "You're right, she's like that now." Mia placed the jar on the workbench and crossed her arms. "Dad, you seriously can't see that there's something wrong with her? She doesn't even really look at me. Yesterday I asked if we could go to the movies this weekend, and she said, 'Let's see,' and went into the bathroom with her phone." "With a phone?" Nate frowned, remembering the password on the screen. "Does she do this often?" "The last couple of weeks, yes," Mia shrugged. "She used to show me pictures, but now she locked herself away." "Don't you think it's weird?" "I think," he nodded, looking at his daughter. "But I don't know how to ask without her exploding." "Just ask," Mia snorted. "You're a man, Dad. Take it and say, 'Sophie, what the hell is going on? It can't get any worse.'" "It will be," Nate chuckled, but the laugh came out bitter. "She was already yelling yesterday that I didn't trust her. If I start talking about the phone, she will completely leave." "Well, let him go." Mia took the can and headed towards the door. "Maybe then he'll at least tell the truth. I'm in the room, if anything." "Okay," he waved to her, and the door slammed. Nate was left alone. He pulled the check out of his pocket, smoothed it out on the workbench, and stared at the numbers. 2 cocktails, fries, 21.47. He closed his eyes, trying to remember that evening. Sophia returned home at 10:30. He picked her up at the hospital. She looked tired, but not drunk. Or did he just not notice? Nate rubbed his temples, feeling his head begin to pound. He remembered how he and Sophia met. It was 13 years ago, in a bar. Ironic, now that I think about it. He had just returned from the army, with empty pockets and a lot of scars, not only on his body. She worked as a nurse in a military hospital, where he was taken with a shot in the shoulder. Nate joked at the time that she was the only one who didn't look at him as a walking problem. They started talking, and a week later they met at a bar in Reno. Sophia ordered a margarita, he ordered a beer. They laughed until midnight, and Nate felt like he could breathe for the first time in years. "You were different," he muttered, looking at the receipt. "Open. Honest." He remembered their first anniversary. They went to the mountains and rented a hut near a lake. Sophia then pulled him onto the boat, although he was afraid of water after the service. She laughed when he almost turned them over, and then she kissed him right in the middle of the lake, with wet hair and sparkling eyes. Nate then thought it was forever. They got married a year later, Mia was born, and life became simple: home, work, family. When did it all go wrong? He stood up, walked over to the pickup, and opened the hood. Work always helped him think. He began to tighten the screws, but the memories did not let go. There were times when Sophia would come home from night shifts and wake him up, telling him how she saved someone's life or how a patient gave her candy for changing a bandage. She was beaming then, and Nate loved to listen. And now? Now she returned silently, hid in the bathroom, and lied about the instructions. Maybe it's my own fault, he said out loud, tightening the bolt. Maybe I'm pushing too hard. But the check in my pocket said something different. Nate dropped the wrench and sat down on an old chair against the wall. He remembered how Sophia supported him when he lost his job at an auto repair shop 5 years ago. She took double shifts so they could pay for the house until he opened his garage. She never complained, she just hugged him at night and whispered that they could handle it. Nate felt guilty at the time, but she was his rock, and now he didn't know who she was. The door opened again, and Nate jumped. It was Sophia. She walked in, throwing her bag on the floor, and looked at him. Her uniform was wrinkled, and her face was tired, but something flashed in her eyes: irritation or fear. "You're home," he said, getting up. "It's early." "Yes, they let us out early," she shrugged, walking to the refrigerator. The shift was easy. "Easy," he repeated, watching her get the water. "And in the morning you said that it was a blockage." Sophia froze, then slowly turned around. "Nate, are you starting again?" "The morning was difficult, but then everything calmed down." "What do you want to hear?" "Just asking." He crossed his arms. "You said to yourself that you'll be there until 4. "Jesus," she rolled her eyes, slamming the bottle on the workbench. "I'm not on a chain, Nate. They let you go early, so what? Are you going to count every minute now?" "Not every one." He stepped towards her. "But when you lie, I notice." "Am I lying?" Her voice became harsh. "Are you serious? I'm telling you about my job, and you're lying to me. What should I think, Sophie?" He raised his voice without holding back. "You come, you go, you are silent. I don't even know where you go. In the hospital, Nate." She pointed a finger at her uniform. "Where else should I be?" He opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. The check burned in his pocket, but he did not take it out. Not now. Instead, he said, "Okay, forget. I'm just tired." "But I don't," she snorted, grabbing her bag. "I'm going to sleep. Do not wake me up." She left, slamming the door. Nate woke up with a heavy head, as if he had been carrying stones all night. Sophia left before dawn. He heard the door slam, but did not get up. After yesterday's conversation in the garage, a wall hung between them, and he did not know how to break through it. The receipt from Dusty Coyote lay on the workbench next to the wrench like a silent reproach. He went down to the kitchen, where Mia was already packing her backpack. She looked sleepy, but her movements were sharp, as if she was angry. "Good morning," Nate said, pouring coffee. "Why are you so gloomy?" "Morning, Dad." She threw the notebook into her backpack and looked at him. Mom left again without saying a word. I reminded her about the movie last night, and she just nodded and went into the bedroom. "What's the matter with her?" "I don't know," Nate shrugged, but his voice was strained. "She said she was tired. Maybe the work got to her." "Work," Mia snorted, zipping up her backpack. "Now she only talks about work. Or is silent." "Did you talk to her yesterday?" "I tried." He took a sip of coffee, feeling how the bitter taste did not help him wake up. "It didn't work out. It closed again." "Well, do something." Mia crossed her arms. "You don't just sit and watch her ignore us, right?" Nate looked at his daughter. Her words hurt him. He didn't just sit there. He rummaged through his bag, found the receipt, and was tormented by doubts. But this was not enough. Mia expected action from him, and he expected action from himself too. "I'll figure it out," he said finally. "I promise." "Okay," she nodded, but there was doubt in her eyes. "I'm going to school. Don't forget about pizza in the evening if Mom leaves again." "I won't forget," he smiled, and Mia left, slamming the door. Nate finished his coffee and returned to the garage. He took the check, smoothed it out on the workbench, and stared at the numbers. Dusty Coyote, 9:47 p.m. This was not just a coincidence. He could no longer sit and wait for explanations that Sophia would not give. "Today she has a shift until 6, she said in the morning before leaving. Nate decided to check it out. He grabbed the keys to his old Dodge and left the house around 5. The hospital was 10 minutes away, on the outskirts of the city, next to the highway. Nate parked across the street at an abandoned gas station with a clear view of the exit. His heart was beating like a hammer, and his hands were gripping the steering wheel. This is stupid, he thought. I'm like some kind of crazy person. But it was too late to retreat. At 5:55, Sophia came out of the hospital doors. She was in her uniform, with a bag over her shoulder, and looked tired, but she was in no hurry to get to the car. Nate tensed when he saw a man approach her tall, in a white robe, with dark hair and a confident gait. It was Ryan Collins, the emergency room doctor. Nate saw it a couple of times when he picked up Sophia, but he never paid any attention to it. Now he looked carefully. Damn, he muttered as Sophia smiled at Ryan. She rarely smiled at home lately. They stood at the entrance, talking about something. Nate didn't hear the words, but he saw Ryan touch her shoulder, and she didn't move away. Then they walked to the black Toyota in the parking lot, not Sophia's car, but his. Nate started the engine, trying to keep his distance, and followed as they pulled onto the highway. Where the hell are you going? He squeezed the steering wheel, feeling the sweat forming on his palms. The Toyota turned downtown and stopped at the rusty Sunset Coffee Shop, a small place with a faded sign and tables outside. Nate parked across the street at the store and turned off his headlights. Sophia and Ryan got out of the car, sat down at a table, and ordered coffee. Nate watched them laugh, Ryan leaning towards her and her brushing her hair back. It wasn't like colleagues drinking coffee after their shift. It was like a date. "You're lying to my face," he muttered, clenching his fists. Right in the face. He pulled out his phone to take a photo, but his hands were shaking. Instead, he just watched, feeling everything boil inside him. They sat for about 20 minutes, then got up and walked back to the car. Nate waited for them to leave, but Ryan opened the door for her and Sophia got into the passenger seat. The Toyota drove off and Nate followed, keeping his distance. They turned into a residential area on the edge of town, not their house, but a neat cottage with a red roof. Nate knew the area. Doctors, teachers, people with money lived there. He stopped around the corner, watching Ryan and Sophia get out of the car and walk towards the house. The door opened, and they disappeared inside. "This is it." Nate hit the steering wheel, feeling his anger give way to pain. "You're a liar, Sophie." He sat in the car for another 10 minutes, looking at the illuminated windows. Nothing happened, no silhouettes, no movement. But he didn't need to see anymore. He started the engine and drove home, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. At home, he threw the keys on the table and collapsed on the sofa, covering his face with his hands. The door opened and Mia entered. She froze when she saw him. "Dad," she threw off her backpack. "Why are you so pale?" "It's okay," he straightened up, trying to smile. "I'm just tired." "Yeah, tired," she squinted. "Where have you been?" "The car is warm. I heard you drive up." "I went for spare parts," he lied, looking to the side. "For a pickup truck." "Aha," Mia clearly didn't believe it. "Where is Mom?" "Still at work." He stood up, avoiding her gaze. She said she would be late. Again, Mia sighed, sitting down on the sofa. "Dad, you're lying to me." "I see it." "Mia," he turned to her, his voice becoming harsher than he intended. "Don't interfere, okay? I'll figure it out." "Okay," she raised her hands in surrender. "But if you and your mother are getting a divorce, tell me." "Nobody gets divorced," he shook his head, but the words sounded unconvincing. "Go do your homework." She left with a long look at him. The night in Longview was dark, starless, only the faint light of the moon breaking through the dusty clouds. Nate sat on the living room couch, clutching his third bottle of beer that evening. The TV was turned off, the silence was oppressive, but he did not turn on the light. The darkness suited his mood. After he saw Sophia with Ryan at that cottage, one question was spinning in his head: what to do next? The receipt from Dusty Coyote lay on the coffee table, next to the empty bottle, as evidence he couldn't ignore. The door to the living room opened slightly and Mia entered. She was in pajamas, with disheveled hair, and was holding a glass of water. "Dad, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, turning on the light, like some kind of vampire. I can't sleep, Nate shrugged, putting down his beer. Why aren't you in bed? I wanted some water. She went to the sofa and sat down next to him, looking at him. You're strange today. After I went for spare parts. What's happened? Nothing happened. He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. I'm just thinking. About Mom? Mia narrowed her eyes, putting the glass on the table. Yesterday you lied that she was at work. I see, Dad. Nate looked at his daughter. Her insight frightened him. He didn't want to drag her in, but the lie was getting heavier. Mia, he rubbed his face with his hands. I don't know what to say. Let's just go to bed, okay? No, she crossed her arms. You promised to sort it out. I'm not little, Dad. If Mom is leaving us, I want to know. She's not leaving us, Nate shook his head, but the words sounded uncertain. I'm just checking something. Are you checking? Mia leaned forward. You were following her, right? Is that why you are like this? Mia, that's enough. He raised his voice, and she stepped back. Go to bed. It's none of your business. Okay, she stood up, but her gaze was hard. But if you think that I won't notice anything, you're mistaken. Good night. She left, slamming the door harder than necessary, and Nate was left alone. He finished his beer and threw the bottle to the others. Mia was right, he was watching, and I saw what I didn't want. Now anger was boiling inside, but he did not know where to put it. Should I tell Sophia, leave, or pretend nothing happened? In the morning, he decided to act. Sophia left for her shift, and Nate went into town to visit an old friend, Bob Taylor, who ran an auto repair shop along the highway. Bob knew everyone in Longview. If anyone could talk about Ryan Collins, it would be him. Nate parked outside the workshop, where Bob was tinkering with his motorcycle, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. His beard was gray and his eyes were cunning, like a coyote's. Nate Carter, Bob grinned, shaking his hand. What brings you here? Is the Dodge acting up again? No, the car is fine. Nate nodded towards the motorcycle. Whose is this? Some visitor, Bob shrugged. Why are you so gloomy? Did you have too much beer yesterday? Maybe, Nate chuckled, but the laugh came out. Listen, Bob, I need to ask something. Do you know about Ryan Collins? Collins? Bob narrowed his eyes, throwing the rag on the workbench. The doctor from the hospital? Why do you need it? Just curious, Nate put his hands in his pockets. Did you hear anything? Bob chuckled, scratching his beard. I heard, of course. A guy with money, his own house, a new Toyota. He works in the emergency room. Women love him. And what? Women, you say? Nate clenched his fists in his pockets. Who exactly? Anyone, Bob laughed. He's a beauty, Nate. There were rumors that he had an affair with one nurse a couple of years ago until she left. Then we saw her with the one who works at the pharmacy. Why didn't he please you? Nothing. Nate shrugged, trying to sound indifferent. The name just came up. Well, he's not a saint, that's for sure, Bob winked. If your Sophie is working with him, keep your eyes peeled. People like him love attention. Sophie, Nate tensed. Have you seen her with him? Nope, Bob shook his head. But she's in the hospital, and he's a star there. You never know. I see, Nate nodded, feeling his anger rising. Thank you, Bob. You're welcome, Bob returned to the motorcycle. Come in if anything happens. Nate got into the car and hit the steering wheel. Ryan Collins is a handsome guy who loves attention. Bob's words swirled in his head, mixing with the image of last night. Sophia laughing at a table in a coffee shop, her hand not moving away from his touch. Nate started the engine and drove home, but his anger did not go away. At home, he found Sophia in the kitchen. She returned earlier than he expected and was standing at the sink, washing dishes. Her uniform was hanging on the chair, and her hair was wet from the shower. You're home, he said, throwing the keys on the table. It's early. Yes, they let me go. She didn't turn around. Where have you been? Bob, he sat down, looking at her. I went for spare parts. Aha, she continued to wash the plate, but her movements were abrupt. Mia hasn't come yet? No, Nate crossed his arms. Sophie, can I ask you something? Go ahead. She finally turned around, wiping her hands with a towel. Just no interrogations, okay? No interrogations, he nodded, but his voice became harsher. Do you often work with Ryan Collins? Sophia froze, the towel hanging in her hands. With Ryan? She frowned. Where did you get it from? I heard about him. Nate shrugged. Bob mentioned it. He says he's a star at the hospital. Well, he's a doctor. She threw the towel on the table and crossed her arms. Of course, I work with him. And what? I'm just asking. He looked into her eyes. Do you communicate closely with him? Close? She snorted. Nate, are you serious? He's a colleague. We carry patients around together, and that's it. That's all. He leaned forward. Do you also go to a coffee shop with your colleagues? Her face turned pale, but she quickly pulled herself together. To the coffee shop? She laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. What are you talking about? Yesterday, Nate stood up, feeling his anger welling up. I saw you, with him, in Rusty Sunset. Sophia opened her mouth, but didn't say anything. She looked at him and panic flashed in her eyes. Were you following me? She finally squeezed out. Are you sick, Nate? And you're lying to me. He stepped towards her. Coffee after the shift? With Ryan? Is this your job now? It was coffee. She raised her voice. We were tired. We went for a drink, so what? Are you a spy now? Coffee? He nodded, but there was sarcasm in his voice. And then to his house. Should you drink coffee too? She froze, and the silence became deafening. Nate saw her face change from anger to something else. Fear? Wine? I'm going to bed, she finally said, turning away. You're delirious. She left, and Nate remained standing. The anger was seething, but now something else was mixed with it, pain. He knew he was right, but he couldn't prove it. Bye. Nate woke up late with a headache after a sleepless night on the couch. After yesterday's conversation with Sophia, he did not go to the bedroom. He did not want to see her pretending that nothing was happening. Her words, "You're delusional," sounded like mockery in his head, but he couldn't prove otherwise. Bye. He went down to the kitchen, where Mia was already eating toast, scrolling through her phone. She looked at him, noticing his wrinkled jeans and the circles under his eyes. Dad, you're like a zombie, she said, taking a bite. Did you sleep on the sofa again? Aha. Nate poured himself some coffee and sat down across from him. I couldn't sleep. Because of Mom? Mia squinted, putting her phone aside. You were yelling at each other yesterday. I heard. They didn't yell, he shook his head, but his voice was tired. They were just talking. Loud. Yeah, they said, she snorted. You asked her about some Ryan. Who is this? Nate froze with his mug to his mouth. He didn't want Mia to know, but she listened too well. Her colleague, he said, trying to sound indifferent. The name just came up. Colleague, Mia repeated, looking at him. And because of your colleague, you blamed her for coming home late? Dad, I'm not stupid. Maya, he put the mug on the table, don't interfere, okay? This is between me and Mom. Between you, she crossed her arms. Am I not part of the family? Do you think I don't see you both walking around like strangers? She didn't even talk to me yesterday. She just went to bed. She's tired, Nate shrugged, but the words sounded empty. Her work is hard. Work, Mia rolled her eyes. You've said this 100 times. But she used to at least chat with me. And now nothing. And you are silent too. What's going on, Dad? Nate looked at his daughter, her stubbornness reminiscent of his own. He couldn't tell her about the coffee shop, about Ryan's house, about the check. But I didn't want to lie any further. I'm trying to understand, he said finally. Give me time, Mia. I'll figure it out. Okay, she stood up and took her backpack. But if you don't figure it out, I'll ask Mom myself. I'm tired of this. Don't interfere, he raised his voice, and she stopped at the door. Promise. Okay, she sighed. But you also promise that you won't be silent forever. I'm going to school. The door slammed and Nate was left alone. He finished his coffee and stared at the table. Mia was right, he couldn't remain silent. but I didn't want to throw accusations without evidence. He saw Sophia with Ryan, but it could have been anything, coffee with a colleague, a friendly meeting. Although deep down he knew it was a lie. Anger seethed, but behind it lay pain. He still loved her, and that made everything more difficult. Nate stood up, walked over to the calendar on the wall, and ran his finger over the dates. Tomorrow is their anniversary, 17 years since their wedding. He remembered how they had celebrated before. Dinner at home, a bottle of wine, dancing to an old radio in the living room. Last year, Sophia baked a cake and Mia laughed that they were too old for romance. Nate decided to use it. If she still wants their family, she will agree. If not, he will understand. He grabbed the phone and dialed her number. After 3 rings, she answered, her voice tired. "Nate, did something happen?" "No," he coughed, trying to sound calm. "I just wanted to ask. Tomorrow is our anniversary. Thought we could have dinner, just you and me." The silence on the other end was long, too long. "Anniversary," she finally said. "I forgot, to be honest. Shift tomorrow, Nate." "Until when?" He squeezed the phone. "We can later. I'll order something. Let's sit at home." "Until 6, she sighed. "Okay, let's try it. But I'll be tired. Don't expect miracles." "I'm not waiting," he nodded, although she didn't see. "I just want to be with you. Mia is spending the night with a friend, so we'll be alone." "Okay," her voice softened. "See you tomorrow." "See you," he hung up and exhaled. This was an opportunity. If she came, if she was the Sophia he knew, maybe he was wrong. But if she lies or refuses, he will be ready. Nate went to the garage, grabbed the keys, and drove into town. He stopped at the Cactus and Rose flower shop, where old lady Marge was selling bouquets and gossip. "Nate Carter," she smiled, adjusting her glasses. "Flowers for Sophia? Anniversary, perhaps?" "I guessed right," he nodded, looking at the roses. "Give me something simple but beautiful." "Simple but beautiful," Marge chuckled, collecting a bouquet of red roses and white lilies. "Sophie will probably be happy. She's golden, she's always been so cute." It was, Nate grinned, but there was a tingling feeling inside. "How much is it from me?" 20, she held out the bouquet. "And say hi to her for me. I haven't seen her in the city for a long time." "I'll tell you." He took the flowers and left. Then he stopped by the same coffee shop where he saw Sophia with Ryan. The waitress, a young girl with a nose piercing, looked at him curiously. "What will you do?" she asked, chewing gum. "Nothing." Nate put his hands in his pockets. "I just wanted to ask. Do you work here often?" "Every day," she shrugged. "And what? Did you see a woman with a doctor here?" He described Sophia. "Average height, blonde hair, with a guy in a robe." "Oh, yes," she nodded. "They came by a couple of times. They took coffee and laughed." He put his hand on her shoulder. "What do you want?" "Just curious." Nate clenched his fists. "Thank you." He walked away, feeling his anger rise again. A couple of times. Not once, but a couple. This was no accident, but he decided to stick to the plan. Dinner tomorrow is his last attempt to understand whether they still have a family. At home, he hid the flowers in the garage in an old refrigerator and began to prepare. He called the pizzeria, ordered their favorite pepperoni and olives, and found an old bottle of wine in the pantry. Then I took out the radio and checked if it worked. Everything was ready. When Sophia returned in the evening, he met her in the kitchen. "Tomorrow at 7, he said, watching her take off her jacket. "Dinner, don't forget." "I won't forget," she nodded, but did not look at him. "I'm going to sleep. Tired." Calm, he watched her leave and thought, tomorrow everything will be decided. The sun in Longview was at its zenith, making the air shuddering. Nate walked out of the garage, wiping sweat from his brow, wrench in hand. Today was his and Sophia's 17th anniversary, and he decided to do everything right. After weeks of suspicion, surveillance, and anger, he wanted to give her a chance, give them both a chance. He threw the key on the workbench and went into the house, where there were already flowers hidden in the old refrigerator and a bottle of wine found in the pantry. The plan was simple. dinner, conversation, trying to remember who they were. He dialed Tony's Pizzeria and ordered their favorite, pepperoni and olives. The voice on the other end was cheerful, almost annoyingly cheerful. "It will be there in an hour," the guy said. "Where to take it?" "Carter, 12 Highway." Nate clutched the phone. "And make it quick, okay?" "No problem," the guy chuckled. "Are you celebrating something?" "Anniversary." Nate hung up without waiting for an answer. He walked into the living room, took out an old radio from the closet, and turned it on. The static began to crackle, but after a couple of turns of the knob, a quiet melody began to play, something from the 80s, slow and familiar. Nate nodded to himself. It was similar to their evenings 10 years ago when Mia fell asleep upstairs and they danced to the same songs. He wanted it back at least for an hour. The door slammed and Mia rushed into the house, leaving her backpack at the threshold. She was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, her hair disheveled from the wind. "Dad, I'm home," she shouted, entering the living room. "Why did you turn on the radio? Does it smell old?" "Hi," Nate smiled, turning off the sound. "The anniversary is today. I thought about sitting with my mother." "Oh, cool," Mia plopped down on the sofa. "And I thought you had already forgotten that you were married." "Where is she?" "On shift," he shrugged. "Until 6, she said. He'll be home at 7. "Uh-huh," Mia squinted at him. "Are you sure she will come? She hasn't been in much of a hurry to get home lately." "He'll come," Nate crossed his arms. "I talked to her this morning." She promised. "I promised," Mia snorted. "Okay, where will I be? I don't want to disturb your dancing." "You're spending the night with a friend," he winked. "At Sarah's, right?" "Yeah," she nodded. "But if Mom doesn't come, call me. I'll come back so you don't drink alone." "I won't drink alone," he grinned, but her words hurt. "Go get ready, smart girl." Already, she stood up, picking up her backpack. "Good luck, Dad. I hope she doesn't ruin your evening." Mia left, and Nate went back to getting ready. He took out flowers, red roses and white lilies, and placed them in a vase on the table. Then I found candles in a drawer, old but working, and placed them around the living room. The pizza arrived at 5:30, and he left the box in the kitchen to keep warm. By 6, everything was ready. The table was set, the wine was open, the radio was playing quietly. Nate even put on a clean shirt, a dark blue one that Sophia had once praised. He sat down on the sofa, looking at his watch. 6:15. She should be here any minute. But at 6:20 the phone rang and Nate grabbed it when he saw her name. His heart skipped a beat. "Nate," Sophia spoke first, her voice tired. "I won't make it by 7. "What?" He stood up, clutching the phone. "You said until 6. She said, she coughed. "But there's a blockage here. The patient is serious. We must stay. Maybe until 8. "Until 8, he repeated, looking at the candles. "And then what?" "Then I'll be nothing," she sighed. "Listen, let's reschedule. I'm out of shape today." "Shall we reschedule?" His voice became harsher. "Anniversary, Sophie? Are you serious?" "Nate, don't start." She raised her tone. "This is work. I can't leave a person for dinner." "For dinner," he grinned, but the laugh was evil. "Okay, do whatever you want." "I'll call." She hung up. Nate threw the phone onto the couch and slammed his fist onto the table. The wine splashed from the bottle and the candles flickered. He knew she was lying. Patient. After the coffee shop, after Ryan's house, it sounded like a cheap excuse. He grabbed the keys and went out to the car. If she's in the hospital, he'll see. If not, he will understand. After driving 10 minutes to the hospital, he parked at the same abandoned gas station and waited. At 6:35, Sophia left, not alone with Ryan. They stood at the entrance, chatting about something, and she smiled the way she hadn't smiled at home for months. Nate gripped the steering wheel, feeling the anger return, hot and heavy. They got into his Toyota and drove off along the highway, not to their house, but somewhere else. "Patient, huh?" he muttered, hitting the steering wheel. The hell with it. He didn't follow, he was tired of playing spy. But now he knew. She didn't choose her family. Nate returned home, threw his keys on the table, and collapsed on the couch. The table with flowers and candles looked like a mockery. He poured himself some wine, drank it in one gulp, and poured more. The door opened and Mia walked in, earlier than he expected. "Dad?" She froze, looking at him. "Why are you sitting alone? Where's Mom?" At work, he took a sip without looking at her. "I was delayed." "Yeah, I was late." Mia came over and sat down next to me. "What is this, your dinner?" "She didn't come." "Mia," he turned to her, "go to your place. I'm fine." "Not okay," she crossed her arms. "You were waiting for her, and she left." "I see it." "She said she was a patient," he shrugged, but his voice trembled. "Patient," Mia snorted. "Dad, you're lying. What did she do?" "Nothing." He put the glass down. "Go to bed." "No," she leaned towards him. "You promised me to sort it out. She's with that Ryan guy again, right?" Nate looked at his daughter, her eyes shining with anger and pain. He didn't want to pull her in, but the lie no longer held. "I saw her," he said quietly. "She left work with him. I don't know where." "With Ryan?" Mia frowned. "Is this the doctor?" "Yes," he nodded. "She said she would be late, but she left with him." Mia was silent, then hugged him. Nate hugged her back, feeling his anger turn to emptiness. "We'll figure it out, Dad," she said quietly. "Together." "We'll figure it out," he nodded, but inside he knew, this is the end. Left alone, Nate tried to concentrate, to pull himself together. But against my will, memories surfaced in my head of how he and Sophia celebrated their first anniversary. Then they didn't have much money, and they lived in a small rented apartment in Reno. Sophia would have laughed if anyone had said that in 17 years she would be the one who would become cold and distant. But once they were like one whole. The clock on the wall struck midnight, and only then the noise of an engine was heard in front of the house. Nate, hiding, heard the car drive away, and a few seconds later the key turned in the door. Sophia entered the house on tiptoe and began to take off her shoes, trying not to make any noise. As she made her way down the hallway in the darkness, she nearly screamed when she saw Nate's figure on the couch. "Why are you sitting here in the dark?" she asked in a choked voice, and immediately stopped short, feeling the hostile energy that he seemed to radiate. "I'm waiting for you," he answered slowly. Nate's voice was smooth and quiet, but in this silence one could hear the tension that gradually, day after day, burned out his soul. "Are you waiting?" Sophia winced, trying to play off her fatigue. "I told you I'd be late." "There was a patient named Ryan," he clarified without raising his voice, but his voice cut like a razor. She was silent for a few seconds, then sighed heavily. "Nate, I'm not going to fight with you now. I'm tired. I had a hard shift." "Hard shift at the coffee shop," he interrupted, standing up. "Or a hard shift at his house." Sophia blushed, clasping her fingers on her bag until her nails dug into her palms. Evil sparks flashed in her eyes. She didn't want to make excuses. It seemed like she couldn't anymore. "What do you want to hear?" she finally asked sharply, instead of answering his accusations. "Do you want to make a scandal at night? Should we wake up Mia so she can listen to us?" "Mia can hear everything already," Nate said bitterly. "She's not little, Sophie. You and I stopped hiding anything a long time ago. We just pretend that everything is fine." "It's none of your business," Sophia blurted out, and, as if horrified by herself, she immediately bit her lip. "Is it none of my business?" he repeated, feeling resentment and rage boiling inside. "You are my wife, and do I care what happens to you? Is this how it should be, in your opinion? Do you think the wife should report?" Irritation flared up in her voice, but also a hint of fear. "You're lying in wait for me, watching me. What are you trying to achieve, Nate?" He could no longer answer. Everything that wanted to speak out was stuck in a bitter lump in his chest. He walked past her to the stairs leading upstairs, then stopped and turned around. "Tired, you say? Okay, rest. We'll talk tomorrow." He understood that there would be no tomorrow in the sense that it once was. It's just that if he starts screaming now and wakes up Mia, tears, reproaches, barbs, everything will mix into one crazy cacophony. But he didn't want another scene, especially in front of his daughter. Sophia just nodded. There was no former tenderness in her eyes, only coldness. She walked into the living room, saw the cold pizza, the crumpled flowers, sighed, and went to the sink to pour water. The holiday was hopelessly ruined, and what was left of their family hung in the air like an unsaid truth. The next morning, Nate woke up to the sound of the alarm clock that Sophia had set. She got up even earlier, taking a quiet shower and tying her hair into a messy bun. When he came downstairs, she was already drinking coffee, staring out the window. The sun was just rising, cutting the horizon with orange colors. In the silent kitchen, both understood that conversation was inevitable. "I need to go," she said without turning around. "Today the shift is from 8 to 4. Mia also has school. Let her have breakfast." "You go away like a ghost every day," Nate responded, pouring himself some coffee. "We won't even talk." Sophia turned around. Something similar to remorse appeared on her face, but only for a moment. "Okay, what do you want to talk about?" "About us." He put the mug on the table and looked into her eyes. "About what you do in the evenings, why you lie about being late at work, about who you spend time with when you say you're busy at the hospital." "Nate," Sophia shook her head, looking down. "I'm tired of these interrogations. It seems to me that everything is already clear. Something has broken between us. Maybe we should accept this." "Accept?" He felt his palms clenching into fists. "So simple." "Yes." Her voice trembled, but she quickly pulled herself together. I I don't know how to talk about this with you. It's like we're on different wavelengths. Maybe because you are silent, and you are not ready to listen to me. You only blame, attack, and scream. How else should I react if my wife—" He stopped, not daring to say cheating. Sophia didn't answer. In the silence that followed, Mia's footsteps woke up along the corridor. The girl came in, rubbing her eyes, and saw her parents. The situation was so tense that she immediately understood everything. "You're fighting again, aren't you?" Mia asked quietly, and there was hopelessness in her voice. "We don't fight," Nate said, trying to calm his voice. "We're just talking." "Can you speak at least a little more quietly?" Mia frowned, clearly feeling between two fires. "I'm tired of waking up to your quiet but furious whispers." "Sorry," Sophia pursed her lips. "I'm leaving for work. Will you make your own breakfast?" "As always," Mia responded, shrugging her shoulders dryly. Sophia glanced briefly at Nate and left, grabbing her bag. When the door closed behind her, Mia sat down at the table, looking at the ceiling, trying to hide her excitement. "Dad, is this really the end?" she asked quietly. Nate sat down next to him and bowed his head, not knowing what to answer. He wanted to say that no, that they would sort everything out, but he felt that the bridges were already burning. "I don't know, honey," he finally said, "but I don't want you to get involved in all this. These are my problems with my mother." "Ours?" Mia smiled bitterly. "Well, I'm also part of the family. I understand everything, Dad. I see that she is lying and going somewhere where she is clearly more comfortable than with us." "I'll figure it out," Nate said, trying to sound firmer. "Seriously, but no matter how it turns out, you will always come first for me. Remember." Mia didn't answer, she just nodded, stood up, and went to the refrigerator to find something for breakfast. She felt bad in her soul. Living in a house that had ceased to be a home, where parents were almost strangers to each other, was scary and painful for a teenager. That same day, around noon, as Nate was working in the garage on another pickup truck, he suddenly realized that a solution was brewing within him. He could no longer live in constant tension. He picked up the phone and dialed the number of the city legal consultant. A couple of phrases, dry formulation. "I want to discuss the divorce procedure." When he was asked to come to the meeting, he agreed the next day. After that, Nate sat on the workbench for a long time, unable to return to repairing the car. The thought divorce sent a shiver through his body. In 17 years of marriage, such a scenario had never even occurred to him. But now, it seemed, there was no choice left. The next evening, Sophia again came home later than she had promised. She said she was late at work, but Nate didn't ask if she was really at work. He simply silently went into the bedroom, leaving her in the kitchen. No one spoke to anyone at dinner. Mia and Nate himself barely touched the food. Sophia looked tense, as if she was afraid that a scandal was about to break out. But there was no scandal. The painful silence was 1,000 times worse than any scream. The next morning, while Sophia was getting ready, Nate threw her a short phrase. "I need to talk to you in the evening. I'll be waiting in the living room when I get back." Sophia, tying her shoelaces, glanced at him. "Again? What else?" "You'll see," he snapped. She shrugged, as if to say, "Okay, do what you want," and walked away. Several times throughout the day, Nate found himself unable to quite believe what was happening. It's like he's looking at his life from the outside. Divorce, is it true? He asked himself. But remembering Sophia's false explanations, her cold eyes, her late arrivals, and the smell of someone else's cologne on her clothes, he understood. The Rubicon had been passed. In the evening, Nate took out from his dresser drawer a folder with documents that he had brought from a lawyer. This was the initial package of papers needed to file for divorce, as well as several reminders on how to divide property, how to discuss child custody, and everything else that destroys an already fragile family idol. His heart sank when he read these formulations. The plaintiff intends to dissolve the marriage, and so on. The clock showed 21:05 when Sophia entered the house. She was still wearing the same crumpled medical uniform. Her face was tired, but Nate saw a crooked smile that seemed to be stuck halfway. She kicked off her shoes, looked up, and saw him in the living room. "Why are you looking like this?" she asked, noticing his gloomy expression and the folder on the table. "I was waiting for you," he said briefly. "Sit down." Sophia took a step, noticed the word divorce on the cover, and immediately became serious. "Nate, is this a joke?" she asked quietly. "Are you serious?" "Seriously," he tried to remain calm. "I can no longer lie pretending that everything is fine with us when you run to someone else." "Or what is it called?" This is none of your business," she repeated the old phrase again, but her voice trembled treacherously. "And then, Ryan is just my colleague." "Yes," Nate chuckled. "Do these colleagues usually go to bars together? Do they hang out at each other's houses in the evenings, and they forget to at least notify their spouse?" Sophia opened her mouth, but remained silent. She understood that the excuses sounded pathetic. "Listen," she said with effort. "We have been estranged from each other for a long time. I, I don't know who started this breakup first, but it happened, and you can't blame me alone. I'm not absolving myself of guilt." Nate clenched his fists. "Maybe I did something wrong, but you could say you were unhappy. We could change something, go to a psychologist. But you chose to run behind your back." "I didn't run behind my back," she objected, blushing. "Nothing happened that you imagined." "Did you imagine?" Nate sighed. "You know, let's go without these games. I don't want to waste time on empty talk. There are documents. I'm going to serve them one of these days. That's all, right?" Sophia lowered her eyes, but there was no remorse in her voice, rather cold doom. "After so many years of marriage." "Yes," he nodded. "And you know, first of all, for Mia's sake. I don't want her to see this whole nightmare. I want her to live in a calm home. In a quiet house." Sophia smiled sadly. "Won't she want to stay with me?" "Ask her," Nate said. "But I doubt it, considering how you've been treating her lately." Sophia wanted to answer, but Mia, who was standing in the doorway of the living room, they did not notice how she entered, interrupted her. "No, Mom," Mia suddenly said in a trembling voice. "I won't stay with you. I saw what you do with Dad. You lie and go to this Ryan guy." "For what?" Sophia closed her eyes, sighing as if she had been hit. She wanted to approach her daughter, but she pulled away. "Mia, it's not as simple as you think." Sophia tried to justify herself. "I'm an adult woman. I have the right." "Right to what?" Mia interrupted her. "To lie to your father and pretend that he doesn't exist, to destroy our family." "Enough." Sophia raised her voice. "I'm your mother anyway." "And my father is also mine," Mia snapped. "And he behaves much more honestly than you." At least he didn't lie to my face that there were a lot of patients at night. Sophia was at a loss for words. She had never had to deal with such a judgmental tone from her daughter. Mia had always been her best friend, a little trusting girl who shared secrets. Now, standing in front of her was an almost adult girl with burning eyes of resentment and contempt. Okay, Sophia finally muttered. Looks like it's already been decided. Are you really filing for divorce, Nate? Yes, he calmly confirmed, showing the folder. I will sign and submit these papers. If you want a lawyer, hire one. It's too late to pretend that we can fix something. And, you want me to leave? She asked, bitterly compressing her lips. Do you want to stay? Nate spread his arms. What's stopping you? But we live in a small town, Sophie. Everyone sees everything, everyone knows everything. Maybe it would be more convenient for you to live somewhere else, since. He didn't finish, but Sophia understood everything. She felt trapped. The situation itself was like a trap. Of course, no one officially kicked her out, but staying in the same house with a person she could no longer look into the eyes of was like living in a cage. Moreover, Mia clearly supported her father. Okay, she said quietly. I will think. I need time. Nate didn't answer, just nodded. Mia was also silent, clenching her hands into fists. Sophia took her bag and went into the bedroom to lock herself in there, while Nate and Mia remained in the living room. When the door slammed behind Sophia, Mia suddenly burst into tears, unable to bear the tension. Nate hugged her, holding her close, and quietly stroked her hair. In her sobs, he heard the same pain that he felt himself. I'm sorry, baby, he whispered. I'm sorry it turns out this way. It's not your fault, Dad, she said through tears. I see how you suffer. I know how much it hurts you. It hurts me too. He held her tighter. At that moment, Nate understood that for the sake of his daughter, he would do anything to get her out of this situation. And even if this means the collapse of the family, he would rather be a single father than a husband who is constantly betrayed. The next day, Sophia left for work even earlier than usual. Apparently, she didn't want to come face to face with either Nate or Mia at breakfast. Or she simply couldn't find the strength to answer the next questions. Mia, getting up, just shook her hair and said, well, predictable. She ran away. Nate didn't answer. He began preparing documents for a visit to a lawyer to submit them officially. The situation was already getting out of control, and he decided not to delay. They have lived in limbo for too long. At lunchtime, when he drove towards the city court, it seemed to him that everything around him had become one endless, hot day. Dusty streets, rare passers-by greeting him with a nod. Maybe someone already knew that Sophia was hanging out with Ryan. In small towns, news, especially bad news, travels quickly. Now everyone will whisper, sympathize with some, condemn others. But Nate didn't care anymore. The most important thing was that Mia didn't suffer further. The application procedure took about half an hour. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with thin metal-framed glasses, asked a couple of clarifying questions. Are you sure you don't want to try to resolve this through a family psychologist? He asked without much concern in his voice. I'm sure, Nate said firmly. We've gone too far. I made a decision. Okay, the lawyer made a note. Child custody, do you want your daughter to stay with you? Yes, Nate replied. My daughter wants this too. I understand. In this case, you and Sophia will still have to come to an agreement. If she challenges. She won't, Nate interrupted. We have already discussed everything. If necessary, the court will allow it. But I'm sure Mia will tell herself who she wants to live with. I see, the lawyer nodded, busily collecting papers. You will receive a summons to appear in court in a couple of weeks. It all depends on the load, but it's unlikely to last long. Prepare documents about the property, car, plot everything you have in common. Nate stood up, thanked him, and left. Standing on the steps, he breathed in the hot Longview air. Well, now there seems to be no turning back. He felt both bitterness and a strange relief, as if a weight that had been weighing on him for a long time had been lifted from his shoulders. In the evening, he waited for Sophia in the kitchen to inform her that the papers had been submitted. When she came in, Everything was as usual, angry, tired, detached. "We need to talk," he said as soon as she crossed the threshold. "I just got off duty," she waved it off. "I want to take a shower." "No," his voice sounded harsh, and Sophia looked at him in surprise. "I said we need to talk now." She sighed, realizing there was no point in arguing. She kicked off her shoes, walked into the living room, and sat down on the sofa. Nate stood opposite him, crossing his arms over his chest. "I filed for divorce," he began without preamble. Sophia closed her eyes, as if expecting a blow. "I see," she said. "To be honest, I expected this. When is the trial?" "They'll send a summons," he replied. "Division of property, custody of a child, everything will be decided in court if we don't agree. But I don't want to start a war. It's better to negotiate on the shore." "What about Mia?" she asked, rubbing her temples. "She's my daughter too." "She wants to stay with me," Nate said. "And I won't stop her from communicating with you if you want it." "But he will live with me." Sophia smiled sadly. "Yes, I already realize that she hates me now. Maybe over time he will come to his senses and understand that life is a complicated thing." "Maybe," Nate muttered, "but I doubt that she will forgive you for cheating." Sophia didn't answer. In fact, she felt a lump of pain inside. Despite the fact that her relationship with her husband has cooled, losing her daughter is a blow from which it is not so easy to recover. But still, she was not ready to immediately change her new life, if you could call it that. "Okay," she said finally, getting up. "I understood everything. I'll move into a rented apartment one of these days. I have some savings. I don't see the point of staying under one roof because we have already decided everything." Nate nodded. At that moment, she really decided to leave, and he felt a painful emptiness where until recently there had been at least some hope. But on the other hand, I desperately wanted to say, "Don't go, let's talk, let's fix everything." However, pride and a sense of betrayal screamed the opposite. "Okay," was all he said. Sophia moved in 2 days. She rented a small apartment in a new residential complex on the outskirts of the city, which is closer to the hospital. She didn't have a lot of things: a couple of suitcases, a box with medical books and other small items, and cosmetics. She left most of the household belongings, furniture, appliances, dishes in the house, believing that Mia needed it more. Nate hardly helped her get ready. He was too offended, and Sophia didn't ask. Mia watched the process, standing in the doorway of her room with a stony face. She tried not to cry, even though her heart sank. When her mother walked past her with a box, the girl said quietly, "Mom, are you really leaving?" "Yes." Sophia stopped for a moment. "It will probably be better for everyone." "For everyone." Mia's voice sounded reproach and bitterness. "I'm not sure what for me." Sophia bit her lip, but remained silent. Looking at her daughter with a blank look, she moved on. Mia looked after her, feeling deep resentment. But there was also pity for the mother. It is clear that Sophia herself is not completely happy, but for some reason she takes this step. Probably because of Ryan. As she left, Nate stepped out onto the porch to close the door behind her. They met their gaze. In her eyes, a silent farewell seemed to be read, and in his, there is nowhere to return. He didn't say anything, just closed the door as the car drove away. That night, he and Mia sat in the living room, barely speaking. The TV was on, but no one was watching. A background was needed so that the silence did not seem too eerie. The wind howled outside the windows, raising dust and driving pieces of packages along the street. Sometimes it seemed that the house was about to collapse from the emptiness that Sophia's departure left. "Dad," Mia finally said, looking from the screen to her father, "what now? Divorce and all that. How will we live?" "The same way we lived," he responded, trying to smile. "There are only two of us now." "I'm scared," she admitted. "I don't want you to be alone, and I don't want to be without my mother. But on the other hand," she left on her own. "I can handle it," Nate tried to say cheerfully, "and you can handle it. We are together. I know it's not easy, but it would be worse if we all continued to lie to each other. Understand?" Mia nodded, although there were tears in her eyes. Then she stood up and hugged her father. He gently pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "You know," he said quietly, "whatever our relationship with my mother is, you are the best thing we got." Mia just hugged him tighter, and so they sat for several minutes, warming each other in the empty house. A week after Sophia moved, a series of boring legal procedures began. Nate received notice of the hearing date. Sophia was also aware. She received the same documents. The division of property was resolved peacefully. The house remained with Nate and Mia. Sophia gave the car to her husband, and she planned to save for a new one. The most important issue was custody of her daughter, but as Nate predicted, Sophia did not fight. She understood that Mia would not want to move in with her, and forcing the girl through a forensic psychological examination would be cruel. Sophia began to disappear more often at the hospital or, as Nate assumed, at Ryan's. Sometimes Mia mentioned that she saw her mother in the city, but she seemed to be trying to avoid meeting her. A couple of times Mia tried to write Sophia a message in the chat, ask some questions, but the answers came dry, monosyllabic. Deep down, Mia was angry. How could she ruin everything so calmly? Isn't it important for her to communicate with me? But time after time I saw indifference and closed myself. At Nate and Mia's house, life gradually got better on a superficial level. He took on more orders from the garage to pay all the bills. Mia studied, tried to choose where to apply after school. In the evenings, they sometimes had dinner together, watched movies, and chatted about trifles. But both tried not to talk about Sophia. This name hung in the air under a ban, so as not to disturb still fresh wounds. One evening, about a month after Sophia moved in, when Nate had almost finished working in the garage and was about to close, he saw someone's car at the entrance. It was Ryan's Toyota. Nate's heart sank. What does he want? The car slowed down, and Ryan himself got out in a white shirt and trousers, looking arrogant, although there was some concern in his eyes. "Hi," Ryan said as he approached. "You're Nate Carter, right?" "Yes," Nate answered coldly, without turning away. "Do you need anything?" "We need to talk." "About Sophia." Hearing this, Nate almost hissed. He didn't want to talk about Sophia, much less with him. But some strange insistence in Ryan's gaze made him not drive him to hell. "Okay, just briefly," Nate muttered. They walked into the garage, and Nate motioned for Ryan to have a chair at the workbench. He sat down with his hands on his knees. "Look," Ryan began, "I know that everything between you is complicated, and I may be partly to blame for this, but I didn't come to apologize." "Then why?" Nate leaned on the workbench, crossing his arms. "Because I want you to understand that I did not intend to destroy your family. Everything happened spontaneously. Sophia complained that you couldn't find a common language for a long time." "Did you come to say that I'm a bad husband?" Nate interrupted. "No," Ryan winced. "I came to say that Sophia will soon officially divorce you, and I have nothing to do with it. She and I, let's just say we are adults, we met. But our relationship was not what she might have wanted. Me too." Nate didn't understand. Some kind of latent horror stirred in his soul. Is Ryan really leaving Sophia? "In short," Ryan sighed, looking away, "I don't want to continue with her. She is too emotional. She expects more from me, and now it's important for me to concentrate on my career. I'm not ready for what she apparently wanted. I don't want to get married or have children, and she seemed to think that we would live together." With every word, a wave of bitterness grew in Nate's chest. He felt how absurd and cruel it all was. Sophia destroyed their family for this man, and now he doesn't want to continue. "And why are you telling me this?" Nate muttered with restraint, although his hands were shaking with rage. "I know it sounds disgusting, but I wanted you to hear the truth from me and not from rumors. She is a good woman for me, yes, smart, beautiful. We communicated well, but I am not ready for a serious relationship. And I think she understood this. We finally broke up about 3 days ago, and now she seems completely depressed." "Oh, she's depressed," Nate smiled bitterly. "And when she ruined my life and hurt my daughter, it didn't stop her from being depressed." Ryan pursed his lips and looked awkward. I understand that I'm to blame for a lot of things, but one way or another, I'm sorry that everything turned out this way. I hope you and Sophia will find some kind of peaceful interaction. I don't want to interfere anymore. Great, Nate took a step towards the door, indicating that the conversation was over. You can be free. Ryan stood up and, almost touching the instrument table, walked towards the exit. Already at the door, he turned around. You know, Nate, she's still good. If only you could find a way to make peace. Goodbye, Nate interrupted. Ryan threw up his hands and walked out. The garage doors closed and Nate couldn't help but slam his fist into the wall, leaving a small dent in the plywood partition. Anger, pain, resentment, everything was mixed up. This narcissistic doctor simply came to put an end to it. Yes, I got everything I wanted, and now I'm leaving. Do what you want. How did it happen that life, which once seemed stable and happy, is now turned into ruins? That evening, Nate sat in the garage for a long time without turning on the light. Sophia's face appeared before his eyes, the old, cheerful one, the one who saved his life with her care, and the current one cold, depressed, exhausted. Everything was mixed up in his mind, and he didn't know what to feel: pity, anger, relief. When he went up to the house, Mia was already asleep. Nate glanced at the empty rooms, the lonely lamplight in the hallway hurting his eyes. In the morning, Mia asked her father in surprise why he was so gloomy. He briefly said that Ryan had visited him that night and they had talked. Mia perked up, hatred flared in her gaze. What did he need? Does he still dare to come here? I came to say that I abandoned your mother. Nate smiled bitterly. How do you like the news? Mia froze, then slammed her fist on the table. What a bastard. That is, he. He left her, and she left us. How in general? Tears flowed from her eyes. Nate walked over and hugged his daughter. Calm down, honey. Nothing can be changed. But she, is she alone now? Mia looked at her father, embarrassed. Maybe something will happen to her. I don't know, Nate sighed heavily. Honestly, I don't understand what's going on in her head. But she made a choice, and I don't have to save her. In fact, part of his heart said, Sophie is probably not feeling well right now. Maybe we need to talk. But the second, louder part was screaming, she betrayed you and your daughter. Let her sort it out herself. And yet, the thoughts that Sophia was abandoned, that she was left alone with her guilt and pain, did not allow her to fully rejoice at just retribution. In the evening, returning from the garage, Nate discovered several missed calls from an unfamiliar number. He called back. It turned out to be Sophia's friend from work, a certain Laura, who in those rare periods when Sophia talked about something about her colleagues was mentioned as a calm and kind woman. Sorry to bother you, Laura said, but I don't know who to turn to. Sophia has not been on shift for 2 days and does not answer calls. I tried to go into her apartment, but she wouldn't open it. I'm worried. And what? Nate himself didn't expect to answer so rudely. Sorry, Laura repeated. I understand that you are getting a divorce, but maybe you can still go, or call. I'm afraid something happened to her. Nate clenched his teeth. Part of him wanted to hang up and not get involved. But the memories of how Sophia saved his life when he returned wounded from the army, of her care, of how dear she was to him, were strong. Okay, he finally managed. Give me the address. Laura quickly provided the apartment complex address and apartment number. Nate hung up the phone and rubbed his hands over his face, trying to figure out what to do. Should I tell Mia or not? It's better not to scare her. He left his daughter a note that he would be away on business and went. The apartment that Sophia rented was in an unsightly-looking complex. Narrow corridors, peeling walls, dim lamps under the ceiling. These were new buildings, but they had already lost their decent appearance. On the door of her apartment, there is a sign with a number 306. Nate knocked. Silence. I knocked louder again, nothing. He pushed the handle, it was locked. Maybe she left. Or is he just sleeping? Sophia, he shouted, feeling an incomprehensible fear. Sophia, open up. No answer. There was not a soul in the corridor. In desperation, Nate pressed the bell several times. Finally, a rustling was heard behind the door, and a weak voice was heard. "Leave me alone." He sighed with relief. "Sophie, it's me, Nate. Open the door." There was silence behind the door. Then I heard someone shuffling and the lock clicking. The door opened slightly on a chain, and Sophia's pale face looked out. Nate shuddered. She looked terrible, sunken eyes, disheveled hair, as if she had not slept or eaten for several days. "What do you need?" she whispered without looking him in the eye. "Laura called," Nate said briefly. "Everyone is worried that you are missing." "I'm fine," Sophia snapped. "Leave." "Yes, I see that everything is fine." He grinned joylessly. "If you don't open the door, I'll knock it down, okay?" Sophia closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then reluctantly removed the chain, opening the entrance for him. The apartment was tiny inside, a narrow hallway leading to the room. There were boxes, bags, dirty dishes on the table, glasses, a bottle of wine, half empty, lying everywhere. The smell is stale, as if it hasn't been ventilated for a long time. "What are you doing here with yourself?" Nate asked sharply as he walked inside. "Why don't you go to work?" "I feel bad," she admitted, sinking into a chair littered with clothes. "Everything is going to hell." "Because of Ryan?" He guessed, and there was mockery in his voice. Sophia pursed her lips. "Yes, he left me. He said that I want too much. You see," she smiled bitterly, "I realized that I was going all in when I left home. I thought I would find new happiness, a new life. And now I'm left alone. Without family, without love, in ruins. Is this funny?" "Not a bit," Nate responded, although everything was bubbling inside. "But why did you stop going to work? You always said that the hospital is your life." Sophia covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembled. She looked like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "I can't see people. I'm ashamed in front of everyone. In front of you, in front of Mia, in front of your colleagues. Everyone now knows that I'm a fool for leaving my family for the sake of. I thought Ryan loved me. It turns out that he needed an easy affair, and I took the bait." Nate looked down, feeling a wave of conflicting emotions take over him. He remembered all the insults, humiliation, pain that he went through because of her deception, and now she sits in front of him, broken. He knew that he would not forgive her, but compassion still stirred in his heart. "Sophie," he finally said, "I didn't come to reproach you." Laura was worried. "Maybe you need to come to your senses, return to normal life." "I no longer have a normal life," she said quietly. "I ruined everything. Nate, you're right." Herself. "She left, trading you and Mia for castles in the air. Now I'm sitting among the garbage, hating myself and don't know what to do." In the silence that followed, Nate understood that he could not forgive her. But leaving him in such a state is also not human. "You still have a daughter," he reminded me, "and work and hands and a head on my shoulders. Get yourself in order, at least for my own sake." "Mia hates me," she whispered. "And you too." Maybe so. Nate looked out the window, trying not to show confusion. "But what next? Do you want to drink away your last savings? You get fired, and then what?" Sophia took a deep breath, as if pondering his words. Somewhere deep down, she knew that he was right. Her pride rebelled, not allowing her to admit her mistake. But now, sitting alone in a dirty apartment, she saw the result of her own decisions. "Leave me," she finally said, although her voice sounded unconvincing. "I need to think." "Think about it," he agreed, heading towards the exit. "But promise me you'll call work and put the apartment in order. If you need help, I don't know, moral or psychological, then contact Laura, a psychologist, anyone. Just don't sit here. Mia asks about you." "Is she asking?" Sophia's gaze wavered. "Yes," Nate answered dryly. "Don't expect her to come running with hugs. She's angry, but she's worried." Sophia said nothing, just looked down. Nate realized the conversation was over and left. In the corridor, he slowly walked towards the elevator, feeling the cats scratching inside. On the one hand, he felt malicious satisfaction. Sophia got what she deserved because she herself betrayed their family. On the other hand, he felt sorry for her as a person who was confused and lost herself. After all, she was once the woman he loved more than life itself. Returning home, Nate found Mia returning from school. There was curiosity on her face when she saw her father so focused. She dropped her backpack and went to the kitchen to get water. "Well, where have you been?" she asked, taking a sip from her glass. "Your mother," Nate answered and saw her flinch. "At her place?" Mixed feelings flashed in the girl's eyes. "How is she?" Nate sighed heavily, sat down at the table, and motioned for her to sit across from him. "Doesn't matter. She's sitting in the apartment, apparently starting to drink. Looks bad. Ryan dumped her, like I said." "It's my own fault," Mia snapped instantly, although an alarm was visible on her face. "Why did she have to leave?" "Fair, but she seems to be on the verge of a breakdown." "And what? Should we feel sorry for her?" Mia shrugged. "I don't understand, Dad. She betrayed us." Nate was silent. He wanted to say, "Yes, she betrayed me," but he remembered how Sophia looked, how tears flowed from her eyes. He no longer wished her harm. "Listen," he began slowly, "it hurts me too. I also feel offended. But she's your mother, and to be honest, I don't want her to kill herself. People tend to make mistakes." Mia was silent for a couple of seconds, then said quietly, "Then let him apologize first. She'll tell you what she did. I don't want to just pretend that everything is fine. Nobody says to pretend. But maybe it's worth talking to her. Not now, but soon, because otherwise you will lose each other completely." Mia looked away. Lately, she had been living in a state of intense resentment, but her father's words penetrated her heart. Somewhere deep inside there remained love for my mother. "I'll think about it," she finally said. "Just let her call herself Dad. I won't run after her." "That's right," Nate nodded. "Nobody forces you." The conversation ended there. But Nate sensed a seed of doubt and perhaps compassion growing in Mia's heart. Although she will not forgive everything at once, she may stop believing that her mother is all gone and can be erased from life. A week later, the first divorce hearing took place. Sophia came in formal clothes, but her face was gloomy and haggard. Nate could see her trying to hold on, but her hands were shaking and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying all night. Mia was also present because the custody issue was being resolved. The judge, an elderly man wearing thick-rimmed glasses, dryly read out the papers and confirmed that the parties agreed to the divorce. Then he asked if there were any objections to the child's residence. Sophia cleared her throat and looked at Mia. "I won't object." Mia wants to live with her father. The judge turned his gaze to the girl. "Do you confirm?" "Yes," Mia nodded. "I want to stay with Dad." "Okay," the judge looked at Nate. "So you are not challenging the joint ownership of the house, and the spouse refuses her part?" "Yes," Nate confirmed. Everything was resolved peacefully. "I see," the judge made notes. "Then, taking into account the consent of the parties, the marriage is dissolved. The official decision will be sent by mail in 2 weeks. That's it, the hearing is over." He hit the hammer and everyone stood up. Nate saw Mia breathe a sigh of relief. Sophia stood with her fingers clasped, not knowing where to place her eyes. Then she suddenly approached Mia decisively. "Baby," she began, but the girl recoiled, flushing. "Don't call me that," she said in a trembling voice. "I'm not a baby." Sophia was confused. "Sorry, I want to talk." Mia took a deep breath and looked at her father as if looking for support. He nodded, making it clear that the decision was hers. The girl turned to her mother. "Okay, but not here, not now. Maybe tomorrow," Sophia suggested. "After school?" Mia hesitated for a few seconds, then nodded. "Okay, tomorrow." Sophia seemed to feel great relief and wanted to touch her daughter's hand, but she pulled away. Nate watched this scene carefully. It was painful for him to see this rift, but he was also happy that, perhaps, at least some communication would begin. "Nate," Sophia suddenly turned to him, her voice trembling. "Do you have anything to say?" "Not anymore," he answered slowly. "I think everything has been decided. Take care of yourself." She looked at him, and remorse was visible in her gaze, but the words remained unspoken. Nate understood. They had nothing left to share except memories. And no matter how much she regrets what she did, the past cannot be returned. They only have a daughter left, and for her sake, they can maintain formal contacts. They separated at the court steps. Sophia walked to her car, trying to stay upright, but the way her shoulders slumped made it clear that she seemed broken inside. The next day, Mia arranged to meet her mother after school, near the Maple Grove Cafe, a small place that served delicious sandwiches and milkshakes. The girl arrived at the appointed time, but Sophia was not there. She was about to leave, deciding that her mother would not come when she appeared, out of breath, with her hair down, in jeans and a t-shirt. "Sorry, I'm late," Sophia said, coming closer. "I stayed in the hospital. A real change," she added, probably trying to joke, but it came out inappropriate. "Okay," Mia muttered. "Let's go sit down." They went into a cafe and chose a table by the window. Mia ordered herself a milkshake. Sophia ordered coffee without sugar. They sat in awkward silence for a while, looking around the room. Soft music, the chatter of other visitors, everything seemed so normal, as if there was no divorce or betrayal. Finally, Mia decided, "Well, you wanted to talk. Speak." Sophia sighed, clutching her coffee mug with both hands. "Mia, I am very sorry that it all turned out this way. I know I hurt you. And to your father, I will not make excuses. I acted selfishly and stupidly." Mia sat frowning and nodded. "Yes, exactly. I understand that you are angry, and you have the right to do so. I just want you to know that I still love you. You will always be my daughter, and I don't want to lose you because of my mistake." "Why didn't you think about this earlier?" Mia blurted out. "When did you run to Ryan? Did you think that everything would be wonderful and fun, and that Dad and I would just disappear?" Sophia looked away, startled by her directness. I guess I wasn't thinking with my head at that moment. It seemed to me that in my relationship with my father, we had reached a dead end for a long time, and I was looking for a way out or some kind of feeling, a new life. "Did you find it?" Sophia smiled bitterly. "No. As it turned out, Ryan wasn't planning anything serious. I was left alone." "Dad was right," Mia said sadly, looking into her cocktail. "I don't understand why you destroyed everything." "I don't understand myself," Sophia admitted, pressing her hand to her chest, where her wounded heart was beating under her t-shirt. "Sometimes people make mistakes for which they later pay. I'm already paying, Mia." The daughter did not answer. She took a sip of her cocktail. All this sounded sincere, and although she could not forgive the betrayal, something trembled in her soul. Maybe after all, the mother is not a monster, but just a person who has stumbled. But the wounds are still too fresh. "I don't want to live with you," Mia said, as if warning. "Dad is closer to me, and I know that he will not betray me, he will not lie." "Understand? I understand," Sophia said barely audibly, "and I'm not going to take anything away from you. You and your father have already made a decision, and I will not interfere with it. But can we cross paths sometimes?" Mia asked, and her voice softened. "I just don't want you to disappear completely, even though I cannot forgive you right away." Hearing this, Sophia felt a pang of joy and guilt at the same time. "Certainly. I will be glad if we can see each other sometimes. Maybe have lunch together, go to the store, whatever you want." Mia nodded. The atmosphere softened a little, the tension eased. They talked a little more about school, about where Mia was going to go. Sophia offered to help pay for a chemistry or biology tutor if needed, since she knew Mia was considering the medical field. The girl said thank you unusually coldly, but did not give free rein to her feelings. When they left the cafe, Mia asked, "Don't accompany me, I'll go myself. I still need to go to the library." "Okay," Sophia nodded. "Take care of yourself." They didn't hug goodbye. But something changed. A thread of dialogue appeared, albeit taut and thin, like a spider's web. Weeks passed. What everyone was waiting for happened. The divorce was officially filed. Nate and Sophia were now listed as ex-spouses. From this, at some point, Nate's soul felt empty, but also light. Now there was no longer even a formal need to save anything. He lived for Mia, fulfilled orders in the garage. Sometimes in the evenings he watched old movies or went for a run so as not to go crazy. Mia was preparing for her final exams. Sophia tried several times to resume communication with her daughter. They sat together in a cafe a couple of times and went shopping. After one of these meetings, Mia came home looking thoughtful, and Nate asked, "Well, how?" "Fine," she replied. "I'm still angry with her. But she really tries. She tells how she goes to a psychologist to stop drinking. Looks like he's trying to pull himself together." "That's great," Nate felt relieved. "Nobody needs a mother who is completely going down the drain." "Yes," Mia agreed and fell silent. However, he noticed that it was still difficult for her to talk about Sophia. Meanwhile, Sophia herself began to appear more often at the hospital. Gradually, she regained the respect of her colleagues, even though they whispered behind her back about her personal life. But there were no louder conversations. You never know what's going on. Sophia focused on work. She took on extra shifts, helped newcomers, as if trying to atone for her guilt before life itself. One evening, as Nate was about to close the garage, the door opened. He thought it was a client, but saw Sophia. She was wearing casual clothes, jeans, a shirt, her hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. The face is serious, but without the previous breakdown. Nate straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag. "Hello," he said dryly. "Are you on business? Can we talk?" she asked. "Speak," Nate nodded, gesturing for a chair. Sophia sat up and looked around as if she had not been here for 100 years. "I wanted to say thank you," she began, "because you still came to me when I was on the edge, and for not stopping me from seeing Mia. I know after everything, you could have acted differently." Nate was silent, not knowing what to answer. He looked at her and remembered the times when they were happy. But there was no more pain in my chest. Enough time had passed, and the pain had dulled. "And one more thing," Sophia continued, looking into his eyes. I'm really sorry about what happened. I'm not asking you to forgive me or come back. I just want you to know that I admit I was wrong. And I hope someday we will be able to communicate normally without hatred." In the silence of the garage, Nate felt a lump rise in his throat. He once dreamed that Sophia would repent and return to her family. But now, looking at her, he realized that everything was different. Their family no longer existed. There are only two people, once close, but now strangers, and there is a daughter whom they both love. "Okay," he said finally. "I don't want to quarrel. We have Mia, and she needs to grow up knowing that her parents can at least talk." "Exactly," Sophia breathed out a sigh of relief. "Thank you. I'm glad we're on the same page. Just don't expect me to forget. I don't forget the betrayal, but living with hatred is also not an option." Sophia looked down. "Understand. You're right. Still, thank you." She stood up, walked towards the exit, but suddenly turned around. "Yes, if Mia wants, I'm ready to help her with her admission, with money if necessary." "I'll let her know," he nodded. "I think she will appreciate the gesture." Sophia smiled sadly through the prism of guilt and regret, then left, quietly closing the door. Nate was left alone in the garage. He understood that the feeling of emptiness still did not disappear, but there was no longer a sharp wound. Now he has his own life, plans, work, a daughter that he needs. And Sophia, yes, she also lives, trying to atone for her mistakes. This may not make it any easier, but it is more or less calm. Almost a year has passed since the divorce. Mia was finishing school and received a high score in her final exams, planning to enter the biology department at the capital's university. Nate was proud of her and helped his daughter with applications and documents almost every evening. Sophia regularly called Mia, and they even met on the weekends to go shopping for college. The relationship between mother and daughter could not be called the same. Fragments remained from the former trusting closeness, but still it was better than complete separation. Sophia continued to work at the hospital, went to a psychologist for some time, stopped drinking, and established some kind of life in the same apartment. She no longer looked for replacements in other men, focusing on her professional activities. Sometimes she would catch glimpses of Nate in the city. They would exchange nods and a few phrases, strangers connected by a common daughter and a common past. In rare moments of loneliness, when life seemed to be settled, Nate recalled the years that he and Sophia lived together, their first acquaintance, their shared cabin by the lake, the birth of Mia. He also remembered the moment when everything went wrong, how he missed the details and did not notice that Sophia was moving away from him. But now all this was in the past. Sophia sometimes sat at the window of her apartment in the evenings, looking at the sunset over the dusty horizon of Nevada and thinking about what a mistake she had made. Ryan was just an illusion, a temporary escape from problems, and she lost her real feelings, like her real family. Yes, she often asked herself the question, could I have done otherwise? But the answer remained the same. It's too late to change anything. Most of all, she regretted that she could not regain her daughter's trust. Mia's childhood had already passed, and she was supposed to accompany her in these important years, but instead brought only pain. Sometimes Sophia still caught herself thinking that she hoped that over time Mia would forgive her and they would become closer. As for Nate, he was now a man who had the right to live without her, and he seemed to be coping well. Sophia understood that she would never forget what she had done, and all her desperate dreams of a happy ending with Ryan of romance were shattered by harsh reality. So she remained living in the same city with them people for whom she had once been everything. But now she had become a stranger, and this realization was the most terrible retribution for her mistake. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.